Jonah Reed was not a hero. He was not brave in the way soldiers were brave, and he did not dream of glory or medals. He was just a human engineer who fixed broken ships in forgotten places. His hands were always stained with oil, his clothes smelled of metal and burned wires, and his eyes carried the tired look of someone who had seen too many failures drift into space. He lived contract to contract. If a ship was too old, too damaged, or too dangerous, that was when Jonah was called. Others refused those jobs. Jonah accepted them, not because he liked risk, but because broken things made sense to him. Machines failed for reasons. People often didn't. The message arrived late. Flashing on his cracked console, distress signal received. Unknown vessel, severe damage, payment guaranteed. Jonah leaned back in his chair and sighed. Guaranteed payment was rare. That alone made him suspicious. He checked the location. Far, very far. Deep space, beyond normal trade routes, where stars were thin and silence felt heavier. No name, no registry, Jonah muttered. That's never good. Still, he accepted. His ship jumped into warp with a low groan, as if even it did not like where they were going. Hours later, the stars stretched and snapped back into place, and the unknown vessel appeared on his screen. Jonah went quiet. The ship was beautiful in a strange way. Not sharp and mechanical like human ships, but smooth, curved, almost organic. Black metal reflected the stars like dark water. Parts of it were broken open, glowing faintly from within. This isn't human, Jonah whispered. Every instinct told him to turn around. Instead, he guided his ship closer when he docked. The airlock sealed with a soft, unfamiliar sound. Jonah grabbed his toolpack and stepped inside. The silence hit him first. No hum of engines. No footsteps. Just stillness. The corridors were wide and elegant, but damaged. Burn marks ran along the walls. Deep, claw-like scratches cut through metal that should have been impossible to break. Lights flickered weakly, as if the ship itself was struggling to stay awake. Jonah walked slowly, eyes alert, breath steady. "Hello," he called, his voice echoed back, lonely. He followed failing power lines toward the core. The deeper he went, the heavier his chest felt. This ship hadn't just been in an accident. It had been attacked. No, not attacked, sabotaged. Then he heard it, breathing, faint, uneven, alive. Jonah froze. He turned toward the sound and moved carefully, heart pounding. The command chamber doors were partially melted, forced open from the inside. He squeezed through, and then he saw her. She lay against the shattered throne at the center of the room, tall, regal, even in ruin. Her armor was torn and burned, glowing faintly with dying energy. Her skin shimmered like silver blue glass, cracked with injuries. Beside her, a broken crown lay on the floor, split cleanly in two. This was no crew member. This was someone important. Her eyes opened. They were gold, bright, sharp, and full of pain. They locked onto Jonah. He raised his hands slowly, tools clattering to the floor. His mouth went dry. "I'm just a mechanic," he said softly, even though he didn't know if she could understand him. "I'm here to help." The alien woman tried to speak. Her voice came out weak, trembling, filled with exhaustion and disbelief. The ship's translator flickered to life. "Human," she whispered. Jonah swallowed hard. "Yeah," he replied. "Human." She studied him like she was trying to decide if he was real or a final hallucination before death. Her hand twitched, then fell back to the floor. "They sent me here to die," she said quietly. Those words settled into Jonah's chest like a weight. In that moment, he understood. This ship wasn't abandoned. It was a grave meant to be sealed, and the woman lying before him was not just an alien. She was a queen, and she was dying alone in the dark. Jonah stared at her, unsure where to begin. She was regal, even in ruin, every scar on her silver blue skin a story he could not imagine. The crown beside her seemed small now, broken and powerless, but the weight of her presence filled the entire command chamber. Her eyes, golden and sharp, studied him without fear, only pain and disbelief. He crouched beside her carefully. "I can fix this," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I don't know what happened, but I can help you breathe. I can fix the ship. That's all I know." She blinked slowly, as if deciding whether to trust a human. Finally, she whispered, "You fix." The translator cracked, struggling to catch the words. Jonah nodded. "Yes, I fix. I save what's broken." For a moment, the room was silent except for the soft hiss of failing life support. Jonah's eyes roamed the damaged ship. Wires hung like vines. Sparks flickered from torn conduits. Panels were scorched, twisted, and melted. Someone had gone through this ship with deliberate cruelty. Jonah could tell immediately. Every cut, every failed system, it was planned. Not an accident. Not an attack for survival. Sabotaged. His heart tightened. He had repaired many wrecked ships, but never one that carried someone so important. Never one that had been designed to fail so completely. He could almost feel the echo of betrayal in the metal, the silent scream of the ship itself. He started with life support. Oxygen levels were dangerously low, and the Queen was barely breathing. Jonah rigged temporary filters and patches, muttering instructions to himself. Sparks flew from jury-rigged systems, and he flinched but kept working. He passed her water-purified and warmed hand. She drank slowly, hands shaking. Every sip seemed to take a little more strength from her, but she didn't refuse. She studied him with those golden eyes, curiosity and caution warring with exhaustion. Finally, she managed a full sentence. "I am Vale Thera, Queen. Aurelian Star, Dominion." Jonah swallowed hard. He had never expected royalty, not like this. And now, she lay injured before him, far from her people, in the middle of deep space. "I'm Jonah Reed," he said simply. "I'm just someone who fixes things." Her eyes softened just a fraction, a fleeting moment where fear and pride collided. She looked down at her broken crown, then back at Jonah. "My people sent me to die," she said quietly. The words were heavy, laden with centuries of power and the sharp edge of betrayal. Jonah felt anger rise inside him. He had known betrayal to humans, aliens. Everyone had their dark moments, but this was deliberate. A monarch cast aside like trash in space. He clenched his fists. He would not let that happen. Not here. Not now. For 3 days, Jonah worked without rest. He patched systems with human ingenuity, rewired circuits that were centuries ahead of his knowledge, adapted his tools to alien designs, and listened to the ship as if it were alive. Every hum and vibration guided him. Every flash of the lights told him what to repair next. Velthera remained near him, silent at first, then gradually moving closer as she regained some strength. She didn't speak much, only watching him work, occasionally nodding or offering a weak hand to stabilize herself. Her trust grew slowly, built on shared survival rather than words. At night, when the temporary lights dimmed and the chamber was quiet except for the soft whir of restored systems, she finally asked, "Why? Help me, humans." Distant, small. Why? Jonah paused, thinking. He had never been asked that before. Because someone needed help, he said simply, "I fix what is broken. That's all. Doesn't matter who it is." Her golden eyes studied him. There was disbelief, astonishment, even a glimmer of hope. For a moment, Jonah saw a spark return to her, something that belonged to the Queen, not the wounded exile. She tried to stand, faltering, and he caught her. "You saved my life," she said quietly, almost in awe. "All this, why?" Jonah shrugged. "I'm not a hero," he said. "I'm just human. And humans show up when someone is in trouble." For the first time in days, a small smile flickered across her lips. It was fragile, but it was real. And in that silent chamber, broken circuits humming around them, to beings one human, one alien, one queen, one mechanic began to understand each other. One had the power of a star empire. The other had the stubborn determination to refuse walking away from what was broken. Jonah did not know it yet. But, in choosing to help her, he had stepped into a story far bigger than himself. One that would change not only his life, but the life of the galaxy itself. For 3 days, Jonah worked as if the universe depended on his hands alone. Sparks flew, circuits hummed, and the air inside the command chamber grew warmer from all the energy he poured into the broken systems. Velthera stayed close, leaning against patched walls, her golden eyes tracking every movement. Every repaired panel, every rerouted wire seemed to give her a fraction more life. Slowly, painfully, she began to regain strength. Jonah barely slept. He ate only what he could carry from his ship, drank water sparingly, and never stopped checking oxygen, power, and engine status. He was human, small, fragile, yet in this alien machine he felt alive. He felt purpose. And with every small success, Velthera's breathing steadied. On the 4th day, just as Jonah connected the last damaged power conduit, the ship's sensors blared an alert. He jumped back, heart hammering. 3 blips fast, large, and heavily armed appeared on the radar. The ships were Aurelian design, sleek, deadly. They weren't coming for a routine inspection. Velthera's eyes widened. Fear flickered across her regal features for the first time in days. "They," she whispered. The translator cracked and whined, but Jonah understood. They came to finish the job. Jonah's jaw tightened. His hands ached from wiring, burns still raw on his fingers, but his mind cleared. Running was impossible. His own ship could not escape them. This command chamber, this ship, and the wounded queen would be all they could reach if he stayed calm. He had a choice, panic or fight with what he had. He chose to fight. First, he disguised the ship's remaining power. He rerouted energy to damaged conduits, making the attackers believe the ship was still crippled and vulnerable. Then he reinforced hidden shields, using the ship's scars as natural cover. He turned burned sections into traps. Every system he repaired, every sparking panel, became a weapon if used correctly. The first enemy ship docked. Jonah waited. When its airlock hissed open, He vented only the connected chamber. Oxygen bled out into space. The invaders gasped and fell back, coughing, their advanced suits no match for the sudden vacuum. Jonah moved through corridors like a ghost, using fire suppression systems, security doors, and jury-rigged traps. His tools' simple human devices became instruments of strategy. Veilthera watched from the command center, leaning on patched walls, her fear melting into something colder, sharper, fury. "You shouldn't do this," she said, voice strained. "You are human. You are fragile." Jonah smiled weakly, blood trickling from a cut on his temple. "Fragile doesn't mean useless. Fragile means stubborn." He ducked as sparks flew from a vented panel and slammed shut the enemy ship's corridor. The humans never ran from danger. Why should he? One by one, the enemy boarded the ship, expecting easy prey. One by one, they failed. Jonah's human ingenuity, combined with the alien ship's unfamiliar systems, made him unpredictable. They had weapons, numbers, and speed. He had resourcefulness, determination, and an unwillingness to surrender. Still, it was exhausting. Pain lanced through his arms. Breathing became harder. He stumbled at one point, his shoulder cut by a fallen conduit. His sleeve was soaked in blood, and yet he kept moving. Veilthera caught him once, holding him upright. "You will die," she said, her voice trembling. "You cannot survive this." Jonah shook his head. "I survive to fix. That's all. I can't stop now." The last enemy ship hovered above, preparing to fire, its cannons glowing with deadly intent. Jonah's mind raced. He needed help, and he needed it now. He tapped into the ship's emergency comm system, broadcasting a weak human distress signal. It was a gamble. He didn't know if anyone would hear. Then, across the void, it happened. Human ships responded. Not military warships, not elite strike teams, just human miners, traders, and old patrol craft who heard the distress signal and came. They were small, unarmed in comparison, but they came anyway. They formed a wall between Jonah's ship and the enemy. Their comms flared with defiance. "You attack one of ours, you die." Jonah watched in awe as ordinary humans refused to let injustice pass. Not for credit, not for reward, but simply because it was right. The Aurelian attackers hesitated. Humans weren't supposed to matter. Not like this. Not in deep space where laws and borders meant nothing. Jonah's heart swelled with a strange, proud warmth. These humans, his species, to abandon someone in need. They fought not for power, not for glory, but because they could. By the time the battle ended, the enemy ships were wreckage. Jonah, exhausted, slumped against a wall, shaking from pain and adrenaline. Veilthera knelt beside him, holding him gently. She studied the human with new understanding, awe, and gratitude. She had seen empires rise and fall, but she had never seen something like this. A human had stood between her and death, alone, and now the galaxy would never feel the same. Jonah sat in the command chamber, breathing heavily, his body trembling from exhaustion. Every muscle ached, his arms burned from burns and cuts, and his hands were raw from holding tools too long. Yet, even as pain coursed through him, his eyes never left the view. The enemy ships were gone, shattered against human courage, but the quiet that followed was uneasy. Danger could return at any moment. Veilthera knelt beside him, her golden eyes scanning him carefully. He had saved her, and yet she could barely believe it. She had seen empires, legions of warriors, and fleets that conquered planets, but she had never seen humans rise to defend something so fragile, so small. Her mind, used to command and calculation, struggled to comprehend it. Jonah leaned back against the console, chest heaving. "They came," he muttered, almost to himself. "They just came. Because they could." Valethera looked at him, as if seeing the soul of humanity for the first time. You do this?" she asked quietly, disbelief mixed with awe. "Without order, without reward, without law?" Jonah shrugged weakly. "Sometimes we just show up, that's it. We help. We don't ask why or who deserves it. We just don't walk away." The Queen's mind replayed the moment over and over. The miners' old cargo ships forming a wall against Aurelian fire. Traders risking everything to shield a stranger. Patrol ships launching like meteors, not for pay, not for glory, but simply because another life was at stake. She had fought wars, commanded fleets, and yet had never understood loyalty like this. Her hands, still weak from injury, touched Jonah's arm gently. "Your species, your people, they are different," she said, voice soft, almost trembling. "I thought we were alone in the galaxy. I thought the stars were cruel and indifferent." Jonah shook his head. "No, not always." He winced as a spasm of pain ran through his back, but he kept speaking. "We can be small, we can be weak, but when we decide to help, we make a difference. Sometimes that's all it takes." Valethera's gaze softened further. She thought of her empire, of treachery from those she had trusted, of her own near-death, drifting alone in space. The humans had shown her something she had almost forgotten her. Courage not bound by hierarchy or rank. A moral force that could move the impossible. Jonah began to walk through the corridors again, checking systems, making sure no lingering danger remained. He had repaired the engines, life support, and communications to full power. Every wire, every conduit, every panel worked like it was alive. The ship hummed with energy, as if it too understood the human who had refused to walk away. Valethera followed, leaning on a repaired console for support. Her voice was quiet, reflective. "I have lived thousands of cycles," she said, "and commanded empires. But never have I seen loyalty like this. You, humanity, you are small, yet you hold the universe in your hands." Jonah laughed softly, though the sound was rough with exhaustion. "We're not perfect," he said. "We fail a lot, but when it counts, we don't give up, we help. That's all we really do best." Her gaze held his for a long moment. The weight of her gratitude, awe, and a hint of fear for his life pressed into the room, tangible and powerful. He had risked everything. He had fought against impossible odds. And yet he had survived, not because of strength or power, but because of ingenuity, stubbornness, and an unwavering refusal to abandon someone in need. Valethera reached out, lightly placing her hand over his. Her touch was gentle, almost fragile, but carried the weight of an empire. "You are extraordinary," she said simply. "Not because of strength, but because of what you choose to do." Jonah smiled weakly, feeling the first relief wash over him since the fight began. He had fixed the ship. He had saved the Queen. And, in a small way, he had shown her the truth of humanity. For the first time, Valethera saw a path forward. The traitors who had sabotaged her ship had underestimated the humans. They had assumed weakness. They had assumed isolation. They had assumed she would die. They were wrong, and Jonah, exhausted, bloodied, and human, had proven it. The ship hummed steadily now, power stabilized, life support strong. Jonah looked out at the stars, feeling their quiet pulse. Somewhere out there, human ships were returning home, and their courage had saved not just one life, but an empire. Valthera watched him quietly, her heart swelling with a strange, unfamiliar feeling, hope. The kind that came from seeing the impossible made real. The kind that came from understanding that sometimes, even in a vast, uncaring galaxy, someone will always show up. Jonah, without realizing it, had changed her understanding of the universe, and in that quiet, fragile moment, the bond between human and queen, between courage and hope, was forged, stronger than any metal, stronger than any weapon. The journey back to Aurelian space was tense but quiet. Jonah had repaired the ship as best he could, and Valthera was steadily regaining strength. The golden glow of her eyes returned, less pained and more commanding, though the scars on her silver-blue skin told the story of near death. She had been betrayed by her own people, cast into the void like an unwanted relic. Now, thanks to a single human, she was alive, and her empire waited unknowingly for her return. Jonah worked alongside her, monitoring the ship, keeping their route clear. He watched her closely. Every time she took a step, he flinched slightly, fearing another injury. But she moved with determination, her posture stiff but resolute. "We can't waste time," she said quietly. "They think I am gone. They think I am weak." Jonah nodded, tightening a panel he had just repaired. "They're wrong," he said. "You're alive. You're strong. And they won't see it coming." As they neared Aurelian territory, Valthera began to issue commands. Her voice, though still weak, carried authority. She directed ship systems, prepared emergency protocols, and reviewed the traitors' movements. Jonah watched her in awe. She was a queen, even in her brokenness, a leader who refused to surrender. When they arrived, the traitors did not recognize the approaching ship. Their screens showed a lone vessel, battered but moving steadily. They expected a ghost, a queen lost to the void, powerless, gone. But as Valthera's ship emerged from the dark of space, fully functional and accompanied by an unexpected human engineer at her side, panic spread among them. Jonah stayed quiet. His role was simple: keep the queen alive. The rest was hers. But he could see her mind working, strategizing, predicting, planning. The queen he had rescued was no longer a victim. She was a force. A storm wrapped in silver-blue skin and golden eyes. The first of the traitor ships attempted to intercept them. Valthera's voice rang clear: "Prepare for engagement. Shields up. Defenses online." Jonah watched as the ship responded flawlessly, a symphony of alien technology and human repairs working together. The traitors fired, but the Queen's ship moved with precision. Jonah's modifications allowed her to evade and counter with surgical efficiency. When they boarded the palace, Valthera walked slowly through the halls, every step deliberate. Her scars visible, but her presence unbroken. The traitors who had plotted her death knelt instinctively before her. She did not flinch. She did not waver. She looked at Jonah, standing silently behind her, bloodied hands still carrying the signs of hard work, and then addressed the court. "You know why I am here," she said, voice steady and commanding. "I was cast into the void by those I trusted most. My ship was sabotaged, my life threatened, and yet here I stand." Her words silenced the room. She continued, her gaze sweeping across the traitors. "You underestimated loyalty. You underestimated courage. You underestimated what humanity can do." Jonah's presence was quiet but powerful. The human who had fixed her ship, who had refused to abandon her, who had stood between her and death, stood as proof that even in a galaxy filled with betrayal, honor and courage existed. Valethera took her throne once more. She raised her repaired crown, a symbol of survival and strength. Her first decree was simple and profound. Humanity is under the protection of the crown. Any harm against them is harm against the Aurelian star dominion itself. Whispers filled the room. Humans, protectors. How could a single species, so small and fragile in their eyes, command the loyalty of a queen? Yet the evidence stood before them. Jonah, a human engineer, had saved their monarch, had restored the impossible. Jonah felt a mix of pride and disbelief. He had not asked for recognition, rewards, or power. He had only fixed what was broken. But now he saw that one person's determination could ripple across the stars, touching the lives of millions. Valethera approached him quietly once the court proceedings ended. She looked at him not just with gratitude, but with genuine awe. "You did not just fix my ship," she said softly. "You fixed hope. You reminded me that even when all seems lost, someone will rise to do what is right." Jonah shrugged, still feeling the ache of his injuries. "I'm just human," he said. "We don't give up, we show up. That's what we do best." The Queen smiled, a faint but radiant expression. "Then perhaps humanity is stronger than I ever imagined." In that moment, a bond was sealed between the human and the Queen, between humanity and the Aurelian star dominion. It was a quiet, unspoken promise that courage, loyalty, and compassion could overcome betrayal, danger, and even the void of space. Jonah had not sought glory. He had only fixed what was broken. But in doing so, he had changed the course of an empire. And the galaxy would never forget it. Jonah woke up in the palace with a dull ache in every muscle and a duller ache in his chest. He had slept little in the past week, and now the softness of the bed felt strange under his body. The walls shimmered with alien light, and the air smelled faintly of polished metal and alien incense. The grandeur of the throne room, the weight of history, and the eyes of servants and guards resting on him made him feel smaller than he ever had. Valethera appeared at the door, her robes flowing and scars visible under the soft light. She moved carefully, her own body still weak from near death, yet her posture radiated authority. "You slept," she said, voice soft but commanding. "Good, you need it." Jonah sat up slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, needed it badly." He glanced around the room. The throne looked different from the command chamber of her ship. Here, it was polished and grand, carved with symbols he didn't understand. But in its shadows, he could still see the weight of betrayal she had survived. "You've done more than anyone could ask," Valethera said, stepping closer. "I can offer you anything. Wealth, power, rank in my empire. A place at my side." Jonah laughed softly, a dry, tired sound. "I'm not interested in thrones," he said simply. "I fix things. That's it. I'm not made for crowns, politics, or empires." She studied him, her golden eyes wide with surprise. "You refuse." He nodded. "I can't. I'm human. I like fixing things, seeing them work, helping where I can. That's my place. I don't belong in palaces or councils. I belong where I can make a difference quietly. Veilthera's gaze softened. She stepped closer and laid a gentle hand on his shoulder. Her touch was warm and strangely grounding. Then perhaps your difference is greater than any crown could offer. You stood between me and death. You reminded me that strength does not always come from power or armies. Sometimes it comes from courage, from compassion, from refusing to abandon what is broken. Jonah looked down at his hands, scarred and dirty from repairs, and smiled faintly. I'm not a hero. I'm stubborn. That's all. She shook her head, a faint smile crossing her face. No, Jonah. That is exactly why you are a hero. For the next few days, Jonah remained in the palace, helping her assess the damage done to her empire. He worked alongside engineers and technicians of the Aurelian Star Dominion, showing them ways to repair systems, restore communications, and protect ships from sabotage. His methods were simple but effective, based on human ingenuity and practicality. Every time he suggested a fix, Veilthera watched him, quietly amazed. Humans were fragile in body, but in mind and heart, they carried an unexpected resilience. Evenings were quiet. Veilthera would walk the palace halls with him, recounting stories of her empire, of betrayal and trust, of victories and losses. Jonah listened, sometimes offering practical solutions, sometimes just listening. In those moments, they were not queen and human, ruler and subject. They were simply two beings who had survived impossible odds together. One evening, Veilthera stopped in the observation chamber. Stars stretched across the sky, distant, cold, and infinite. She looked at Jonah with a softness he had not seen before. You saved more than a ship. You saved hope. You saved me. And in doing so, you reminded my people, and perhaps even the galaxy, what humanity truly is. Jonah smiled faintly, looking at the stars. Humans show up, he said. We help. We try to fix what we can. That's all we ever really do best. Veilthera nodded. Then perhaps it is time humanity and the Aurelian Star Dominion build together. Not for conquest, not for war, but for repairing what is broken, for helping those in need. Jonah's heart warmed at that. He had never sought recognition, fame, or influence. And yet, here he was, shaping the course of an empire without ever desiring power. He realized that sometimes the quiet acts, the willingness to stay, to repair, to fight for what is right could echo louder than the roar of armies or the glitter of crowns. He packed his tools carefully, preparing to return to his ship. Veilthera watched, her expression soft and full of gratitude. You may leave, she said, but know this, you have a place here, a place in the story of the Dominion. If ever you need aid, you will find it waiting. Jonah shook his head, smiling faintly. I'll stick to fixing ships. That's my place, but I'll never forget this, and neither will the galaxy. As he stepped into his ship, the Queen's words echoed behind him, soft but full of weight. You have shown me what it means to be human. And for that, Jonah Reed, you are remembered. The stars awaited him, vast and endless. He was small, fragile, human, but he carried something far stronger than armies or crowns. Courage, compassion, and the stubborn refusal to abandon what is broken. And that was enough. Jonah Reed's ship cut through the void, small and unarmed, carrying a man who had just changed the course of a civilization. He was exhausted, every joint stiff, every hand cut and burnt from the work that had saved a queen and an empire. Yet despite the fatigue, he felt a lightness he had never known. He had done something that mattered not for glory, not for pay, not for recognition, but because it was right. Behind him, Valthera's fleet glimmered in the distance, escorted by the humans who had answered his distress call. The golden glow of her eyes had returned, steady and fierce. She was no longer the wounded exile drifting in space. She was a queen, reborn through survival, loyalty, and the courage of a human who refused to turn away. Jonah looked out at the stars, feeling their cold light brush against the edges of the ship. He thought about the traitors he had helped overthrow, about the soldiers and civilians who had risked everything to save a stranger. They had not asked who deserved it. They had simply acted. And in that, Jonah recognized something uniquely human, the quiet, stubborn force of compassion and courage. Valthera's voice came through the calm and firm. "Jonah," she said, "your species. You are remarkable. Not in strength, not in numbers, not in weapons, but in will, in courage.